Hi! Now you know the drill. Be sure to click on the button in the lower right hand corner and become a subscriber. It's more important than ever now because we're not releasing videos on a weekly basis. Be sure to hit the notification bell too. That way you'll get a notification when we do release a new video. Now, we have paid courses on udemy.com, and there's a new one called 5 Ways to Enhance Jewelry Designs with Stone Setting. This covers 5 basic techniques that every jeweler should know, so check it out. Okay, let's get to the video. Hi, welcome to the Online Jewelry Academy. I'm Professor John Ahr, and I'm your instructor. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to do a 4-prong setting. And this is a really good example. It's a very large diamond in a rose gold setting, I wish. But we're going to show you how to do 4 prongs with this. And we're going to set a 2-carat cubic zirconia. Now, if you like this video, be sure that you like it and don't forget to subscribe. So let's start with the tools. The first thing is eye protection with a little magnification. But moving over here, I've got a vernier caliper. I've got the chuck key for my flex shaft. For them, we could use a new one. This one's wearing out. I've also got a pair of dividers, a barré file. Notice that this file has no teeth on the back side or on the edges. And I've got a pair of square nose pliers, chain nose pliers, a specialty plier, which is a parallel action gem setting plier. I've got a prong pusher, a loop. I've got a bunch of burrs, stone setting burrs and heart burrs. And of course, I've got our ring with the stone that we'll be setting with slats that have been cut from a paint stir stick. I have a small needle file that is another barré file. I have locking gem tweezers, a wax stick, and a microfiber polishing cloth or velvet cloth. And of course, I'll be working with an engraver's block. Now, if you don't have one of these, we have a video on a great substitution that you can use that involves a universal holding jig and a clamp-on vise. And you can find that video on our playlist. Okay, so let's jump right in and get this going. The first thing that I need to do is I need to secure the ring for the process of stone setting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little sandwich with the slats of wood, and then I'm going to put this into the jaws of my engraver's block. Now I want this to be very secure and stationary and even to the top. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Now, before you start any setting project, one thing that you need to do is inspect the setting to make sure that the prongs are straight and even. And you can check this by eye, and if you needed to make any kind of adjustment, you could use your chain nose pliers to basically just pinch the prongs and move them into position. But a really great way to check to see if your prongs are even and straight is to take your stone and you just place it on the top of the prongs so that the stone balances on the prongs like that. Now, if you can look straight down on it and see that it's sitting on all 4 prongs and you can see a little bit of each prong, chances are that your prongs are just fine. Now, if you do need to make an adjustment, the way that you would do it is with your very nice fine cut barré file. You would place the file on all 4 prongs simultaneously and just give it a push. And change position, make sure that the file's making contact with all 4 prongs, give it a little push, and just repeat this as much as necessary in order to make sure that your prongs are nice and straight. And another good way to check is just look at the prongs, and if you see reflection off the top of all 4 at the same time, then you know that they're all on the same plane. All right, so once you've evened up all the prongs, the next thing that you need to do is to record a measurement on each of the prongs. And in this case, what I want to do is take my dividers and set it to 1 millimeter on this vernier caliper. Now, the reason why I'm using this caliper is because of this. the little indentations for each millimeter marking are kind of notched into the ruler. You could substitute with a ruler that has this same function. So in other words, an electronic caliper won't help you here. All right, so the dividers are set, and what I want to do is place the tip of one on the top of a prong and then slide it across so that the bottom one leaves a mark. So you just go all the way around your setting, marking each of your prongs. Now the dividers are great because they fit, number one, and number two, because of the tension that's maintained in the tool, the measurement is perfectly recorded so that you get the exact same measurement on each one. Okay, so the prongs are now marked. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to make a choice of what type of cutting tool I'm going to use. So let me focus you over here for a second. Most stone setting videos or books are going to encourage you to use a stone setting burr that has a shape like this. The problem is that it will cut a seat for the stone like this, which can actually thin out your prong if you're not careful. And if you don't have great control, you can go a little off center and one prong can be thinner than another. So in my book, a safer way to start out is to use a heart burr. Now this has a nice shape like this that will just notch into your prong along the line. The trick to it is that you just need to control the burr so that as you're cutting that notch, you don't take the burr all the way around the prong, because you don't want to cut anything from the back side of the prong, and you sure don't want to leave an ugly mar on the back of it either. Now, the great news is if you don't have a flex shaft, you can substitute the action of this tool by using either a knife edge needle file or a triangle needle file. Because once you've got the measurement marked, you could just slide the point of either of these files across it to cut the notch. Now, this is what they're going to look like in the tool catalog. The little parallel lines show you where the teeth are on the file. In other words, there are no teeth on the back side of this knife edge file. Okay, so I've got a very small heart burr installed into the handle of my flex shaft. So now all I need to do is cut each of the notches. So let me get started doing that, and I'll be back to show you the results. Okay, all of the notches have been cut into each of the prongs using the heart burr, which was nice and sharp, and it cut a nice clean groove into each one of the prongs. Remember, the important thing about using the heart burr with the flex shaft is you have to control where it goes. You have to pull that tool across the prong. You don't want the tool to lead you. And if you did, it would just lead you around the back side, which would be a big problem. And if all of that is too scary for you, you can reuse the files, remember? All right, so now is the point where you may need to make a slight adjustment to the notches that you made. And let me focus your attention over here for a second to explain why. Well, we're setting a diamond shape, and we want to check the girdle. The girdle is in between the crown and the pavilion cuts. Sometimes it's faceted, sometimes it's smooth, but what we're checking for is whether or not it's even, that the top edge and the bottom edge are parallel to one another. If there's a slight variation where it gets thicker or thinner, well, we may need to adjust how we're setting the stone, or maybe we need to make one of the notches a little bit wider. Now, the way that you're going to check this is with a loop and a pair of locking stone setting tweezers. Now, you can see that I've got the stone locked into the tweezers like this. This will enable me to spin the stone. And if you've never used a loop before, let me show you how to do it. You're going to put your finger through the loop, and then you're going to cock your thumb like this. Now, I'm going to raise this to my face, and I'm going to put the knuckle of my thumb against my cheekbone. I keep both eyes open, and then I bring the stone into focus. And once I have it in focus, then what I can do is I can use my finger to spin it and check to see if my girdle is clean. And it is. It's very clean. All right, so now we're ready to be stone setters. And a professional stone setter would use a tool like this. This is a wax stick. It's microcrystalline wax on the end of a wooden stick, and I've adjusted it to a nice point. And what a stone setter is going to do is just going to touch the top of the stone and bring it up to the setting and position it like so. Then what you can do, you can use the wooden end or the end of the wooden handle or any wooden tool handle to just put pressure onto the table of the stone and just push down. Okay, and let me double check. Yeah, and what it did is it pushed the stone into the notches. In other words, the stone is like a wedge, so it spread the prongs as it went down, and now they're all, it's in the prongs and they're all pushed against the girdle. Okay, now the fun begins. What I want to do is I'm going to inspect to make sure that the stone is straight in the setting and that it truly is in all the notches. It is. And then what I can do is I can pick up my parallel action stone setting pliers. Now these are great. What you do is you set the jaws using this dial so that they just barely connect with two of the prongs that oppose one another. And then you just push this to move the jaws. So it's a very, very minute movement that happens. And what we want to do first is we want to push the prongs to the stone and then go back and push them against the stone. So 2 times is a charm. All right, so I've got these lined up. So I give it a little push, hardly noticeable. I'll do it to these 2. Give it a little push. Now I'm going to go back and squeeze a little tighter. So I'm against the stone, and now I'm against the stone. Great. All right, so now I'm going to shift tools. Now I want to use a prong pusher. Now you can purchase these from most jewelry supply companies, but if you get one that's flat on the top, you need to cut a little groove. And what you're going to do is run your saw blade against the top of it so that you start a cut, and then use your round needle file and continue that until you make a little curved cut all the way down the length of the top of the tool. And what this does is it creates a cradle that will hold the prong so that it doesn't slip during the setting process. And what we want to do now is we're just going to start to push the prong over the top. In some cases, the prongs might be a little stiff, and you may want to push something against the opposing prong. But in this case, we seem to be doing all right. So what we want to do is push against and down. And like I said, it's always a double action in my book. So you kind of want to repeat everything just to make sure that you're doing a good job. And the second time around, you can give it a little bit more pressure just to make sure that your prong is actually coming over the top of the stone and really holding it down. Now, I'm going to turn this to the camera so that you can see the top of it. And you can see that the prongs don't swallow the stone. They just make contact and hold the stone. And this is an important thing to have in mind, because when a woman wears, say, an engagement ring or a wedding ring, the wear on the ring usually is on the top surface of the prongs or on the outside. So you don't want to remove too much of that metal. You want to just make it nice and smooth without removing a lot of the metal, because it's just going to wear with age anyway. So here's the thing. I can pick up a smaller version of the larger beret file. This is just a needle file version of it. And what I want to do is just slide around the upper edge of each of the prongs and just kind of get rid of those sharp corners of each prong. And notice I'm just gliding it over the edges of the prong. So you're going to do this to all 4 or 6 or however many you have to do. And now what I may want to do is I could round it this way a little bit, just give it a little bit of a curve. Notice I break my wrist when I do that. just so I impose a curve there. Now the top edge, because it was square, it's a little bit pokey. We want to get rid of that. Remember, I don't want to file on the outside of the prong or too much on the top. I just want to go over the top just lightly to make sure that I get it nice and even. But guess what? There's a simpler trick for this. I can load a cup burr into my flex shaft. And if you use an appropriate sized cup burr, that cup burr will just hug the top of the prong and give you a nice rounded top. All right, so let's just do that with the others. And that's how you set a 4-prong setting. Now, this should be smooth enough. The tradition in the jewelry industry is that if a woman can slide the top of her engagement ring or wedding ring against her husband or fiance's tie without snagging it, the stone is properly set and it's properly finished. So it should be smooth to the touch and very secure. And a nice little test to make sure if you've done it correctly is you can take the tip of any tool and then just tickle the culet, and if you don't see any movement whatsoever, you're good to go. I hope you liked this video. There are plenty more like it on onlinejewelryacademy.com. Check out our playlist, and don't forget we post cool things to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Be sure to like the video. Bye.